But anyway, I think we're at the end of the interview now.
Oh, okay.
Is there anything that you think you wanted to speak about you didn't speak? Because now I want to ask you about the clapback you did on the assumption that they, at the George, I don't know what to call it. Looks like a massacre, but it's a what should we call it? The collapsed building in George?
I would call it definitely not an accident.
It's not an accident.
I hate it when people do that.
It's not an accident. It's what do we call it? A massacre? Or do we call it?
For me,
because if you say it's an accident, it's as if it wasn't an accident.
It's a construction catastrophe, and there's going to be many more if we allow these things to carry on.
Okay, number one, let's talk.
Okay.
Did we finally get the identity of the company?
Yeah. So there are a number of companies involved, though.
Okay.
So yes, they got the identity of the company, and in fact, I haven't got the list in front of me.
Yeah.
There are 10. Everyone. You know who actually did well on this, which I was surprised. Although I must say, the journalist herself, there are certain pieces that she does. Mariam Tam,
okay,
from Daily Maverick, and I know when I say Daily Maverick, just don't let them talk about the EFF.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
But this particular story, she came out, but she also said it was so difficult to get information.
Very difficult.
It was so hard to get information, and for me, I still think keep your eyes on that. Also look at construction, not only in George, but construction in Mossel Bay.
Okay.
Those two, certain party
in the
run.
South Coast? Yeah.
Certain party run in the Western Cape. Look at who's got connections with who. But anyway, for me it was a total catastrophe. And I think it's had a lot to do with the fact where the people look after each other.
Okay, how many companies were involved?
10.
10 companies. Yeah. So, who's the main contractor?
His name is Theo Kruger.
Oh.
Yeah.
So our suspicions were right.
A list of the names.
Our suspicions were right. It's not some BEE guy.
There's
coming
no BEE in
there's
that.
There's no BEE guy. Okay.
No. Every single one
Yes.
of those things. If you look at all of those companies.
So people were paid 80-something rand a day.
Oh, I saw that, and you know what the funniest thing is that you can't find someone pursuing that angle.
Yes.
So it was slipped in, I think, the George Herald, and now when I went to go and look for that particular article,
it's gone.
It's gone. But then another news outlet had picked up the 80 rand, but it says allegedly. But there's no way you're going to pick up this random amount and say, oh no, they were paid 80 rand a day. The fact that it was people that were undocumented.
I was hoping for Gayton. I hope he succeeded, because what Gayton does whenever a story like that, he quickly runs there, he cordons the people off, and then he sucks information from it, and he had already started that. So it's very difficult, because I would wish he could take this to mainstream media so someone could publish. It's very difficult to get the truth out of there. And the reason, so we started seeing how difficult it was. So no, it means white people are involved here. So here's the thing. So we've been saying in my channel, and I've said to a lot of Zimbabwean guys, the reason we do not want you to come here in South Africa illegally and stuff is because they're going to enslave you, number one. Number two, even after the enslavement by our ruthless sort of business people in farms, and you are still going to be hated by the people who were supposed to get 150 per day because you took 80 rands per day. So we'll end up fighting as Africans for something that we could have avoided.
But that's the idea.
Yeah, you see, and this is where it boggles me to say, guys, there's no need for us to fight. I mean, we are helping each other here. If you go there and sell your, like Helen Zille wants, to go there and sell your labor at what the employer wants, you will always get peanuts, and it will always be slave. And you are, by the way, anyway, let's just go back to this. I don't want to talk about this issue. So Are there any indictments? What have court processes started? Or because I saw the minister went there and he came back, he said, I've left my chief inspector there. We are letting the cops, and when the cops are done, we're going. Are we going to win as people of South Africa? Because our win is to see those companies being closed and those people being prosecuted because they killed people deliberately.
Okay, so what I've been doing is I went back in construction accidents right up until...
I saw it, you unpacked to say, this this is not... Yeah.
Yes, but then I also looked... That's
the designers and the engineers were white.
Yeah, and the companies that... The developers were white.
Yeah.
And the issue here is that when I did that, there is seldom any consequences. There's no record of the bridge falling, for instance, that was...
The Joburg one?
Was that 98 or 96? No, it was already in 96.
Okay.
There was a bridge that fell and there were a whole lot of people were killed, including the engineer.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got this report and stuff like that, but there's no indication. No one went to jail. No one,
Yeah.
And at that stage, no one was compensated. And I've noticed that there's no consequences for this kind of thing. And there was a spate of accidents at a stage because there was so much building in South Africa that people were cutting corners and they were trying to undercut each other price-wise. I mean, for instance, this engineer that was booked on this particular job, the George, yeah. So the head engineer on this job, he's got a history of making mistakes. And people now spoke out, but they all want to stay anonymous because that's how scary this... we always hear about the mafia, construction mafia with
yes,
and stuff.
And they think construction mafia are African people in town.
Yeah. But yeah, so these people didn't speak out and they knew that this guy has messed up previously, where people had to rebuild stuff. So, and this is, they eventually came out because and we don't want to identify the person here. We're not talking about the person here. What we are talking about here is a system that empowers someone like that and allows him to build how many projects, to head up how many projects. And you know that he's not competent. You know that it's a problem. And that's the issue, is that, I listened to, for instance, AfriForum, the Solidarity Movement, and also Pieter Groenewald from Freedom Front Plus. That's what made me so upset about what he said. That's why I went at them about that, we've got this list of, engineers, and they're so wonderful, and it's competent, and they can fix the problem. I loved the beginning where he says, South Africa has engineers that can fix the problem. I'm like, yes. And then, but they left because of blackness in the economy. That's what was his exact. I'm like, dude. But yes, the thing is, the assumption, because you look like me, you are going to be competent. And if I was a male, you'd be even more competent. So it's just crazy. If you just look at what happened here, they kept quiet. Why? Why did you not keep quiet? So why did you keep quiet? So the one developer where this main engineer worked on a job previously spoke to other engineers and said, okay, we need to get the lawyers involved. And they were all too scared and they just stopped. So he carried on building. And he was hired in some of the jobs because he was cheaper than other engineers. So he was cheaper than his white counterparts. so just listen how flawed that system is.
Yeah.
But when you hear things like construction mafia, no one thinks, here is 10 companies working together that were involved in this particular, and not one, one truly BEE company.
so all those 10 were white companies.
Yeah.
And
how did I know this was going to happen? So you didn't listen to what I was saying. I did not say white engineers are incompetent. I said, never assume just because an engineer is white that they are competent. It is dangerous to do what Dr. Groenewald does, besides the obvious racism. But to assume that race equals competence Now, I know it was difficult for you to hear this message because you want to push a particular narrative. However, what did you think was going to happen now? You brought your little example. Do you not think I would have prepared for people like you that I knew wouldn't listen to what I was saying because your underlying prejudices don't allow you to do so? So here you go. So we'll start in 1996. Part of the North Park Mall in Pretoria collapsed. Christian Hutton was the engineer. He was found guilty of contravening the engineering code of conduct and he got a lifelong ban. When this tragedy happened, it killed 4 people and injured several others. 1998, we'll go to the collapse of the Njaka Bridge. Johan Bissoff from VKE, Rolf Hees from Concor, and the engineer was Maria Goos. She passed away during this bridge collapse. So, and why did this happen? Inexperienced design and construction staff, poor construction quality control, and a failure to react to clear warnings that all was not well with the structure led to the disaster. 14 people were killed and 19 people were injured. Then there was the collapse of part of an office block in Little Falls, Roodepoort. The company responsible for this particular development was Dunehill Investments. Again, the findings was incompetence of engineer and lack of oversight. 2 workers were killed and 15 injured. 2015, temporary pedestrian bridge structure collapses onto the M1 highway. Now, this project was a Murray and Roberts construction project, but in this case, again, the engineer and the contract manager, it was found that they were both inexperienced. So both were inexperienced and lacked the expertise for this specific project. As a candidate engineer, Oliver Ardnesgaard should have worked under the supervision of a registered engineer, but Hein Pretorius was not registered with EXA and had no experience in building bridges or erecting temporary structures. 2 people were killed, 19 people were injured. Now again, I'm going to repeat. I am not saying white engineers are incompetent. I am saying just because an engineer is white doesn't mean they're competent. Race does not equal competence. And I should highlight that I have got many more examples. In fact, I thought initially I should go right back during apartheid, so no one can even whiff BEE. And I even went before that, back to 1911. So do you really want to do this, or do you actually want to listen to what I'm saying? When it comes to George and the collapsing of the building 7 days ago, the death toll is still rising. There are a number of people that are still missing. So I haven't made a video about it because it is a huge tragedy. People are still waiting for their loved ones. And I must also say the way the information is being fed through to the media, it's very bits and pieces, it's like patchwork. So you actually have to place it all together. However, I have come to the realization, the more I read, that we need to focus on this so that the victims and their friends and family get justice. For instance, 2 things that stood out for me. The one was Florence Kawunga.
She is 19 and she was mixing DACA in this company. Of course, if you ask them, I think they might tell you that they were doing general cleaning, which is not true. They were mixing DACA, and I've got that evidence that they were mixing DACA there. When last time I talked to her about asking her to stop that work because it's not necessary for a woman to mix DACA. Yeah, so we talked about that, and we were in the process of finding another job for her. If we could, then she could have stopped working, mixing DACA in that company.
Florence is still missing. So they haven't found her yet. But according to the article that I read, she was actually hired as a cleaner. And the building contractor or building developer, Tiens Kruger, said he is aware that she was used for something else. Okay. And then the other thing that I picked up today, it was confirmed that the Engineering Council of South Africa had previously received 2 complaints against one of the registered persons on this project. There's no names of who that was or what their particular role was. Also, the main contractor wasn't registered with the Construction Industry Development Board, but according to current legislation, that is not required for private companies. However, there is an amendment bill that is addressing that. I'm not sure what difference this would have made, but yeah, that's something on the side. All I'm saying is that I think we should watch the story and keep up to date so that the victims can actually have some form of justice and the right people are held accountable. I want to talk about the danger of associating race with competence. And one of the videos that I have seen recently is this by Dr. Groenewald from the Freedom Front Plus.
We have enough competent, qualified engineers in South Africa to solve the problem. But because of blackness in the economy, they went to foreign countries.
So his point is that white equals competent, qualified engineers. Well, let's take a look at what white, competent, qualified engineers mean in certain cases, because what he's doing is associating race with competence. And we are going to specifically look at the tragedy that is happening in George right now, that in my opinion could have definitely been prevented. And we're going to look at this competent, qualified engineer responsible for this project and how he had a record of messing up and yet was given this particular project. Firstly, I want to highlight that the death toll is now at 32 and it's still rising. 61 people have been removed from the rubble and 12 people are in hospital and there are still 20 people unaccounted for, and people are starting to lose hope now. It's day 8. So the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure did highlight that there were 2 complaints against one of the registered persons on this project, but there was an indication who that person was. So what the Daily Maverick did is they approached EXA, the Engineering Council of South Africa, to find out if the complaints were against the engineer, Athol Williams. It was confirmed that the 2 complaints that were registered were against the consulting engineer on this particular project. And the one complaint, there wasn't sufficient evidence, and it was around his conduct on a building site. That was 2019. And then there is another complaint, but that's December 2023, so that's still being investigated. But the kicker on this issue is this competent, qualified engineer that stayed in South Africa had a record of actually delivering shoddy work, but also not taking accountability and responsibility for the work that he's contracted to do. And here are 2 examples. So an owner of the development and consulting and construction management company told Daily Maverick that he was so concerned about the quality of Mitchell's work on a project they collaborated on that he had called in other engineers to provide a second or third opinion and assessment. He also highlighted on a building site the engineer is God, even when he is wrong. Mitchell, he added, was a forceful character, and did not enjoy cooperating with other engineers and would seldom accept criticism or advice. The developer added that he had been unhappy with the work delivered by Mitchell and had confronted him. I was wary of the work he had done on a project and called in 3 different engineers who agreed it was not acceptable and dangerous. But when I said I was calling in the lawyers, none of them would go up against him. Engineers can be like doctors. They are a closed community. Okay, Mitchell was known for leveraging his power as the consulting engineer to withhold Form 4s, the completion certificates, which enable a developer to begin selling the units. Another example. So many people came forward, but they all insisted on remaining anonymous, which actually is concerning about what kind of tactics are used in this particular construction mafia. Okay, I'm going to use that because, you know, when we think construction mafia, we think Eskom. Well, here's a construction mafia for you because, I mean, if you're so afraid to talk out, a developer set out his nightmare experience with Mitchell, who was the consulting engineer on a project in a private housing estate. It was a 2-story development with a basement. The developer was already working with an engineer when a concrete supply company, someone should look into that company, suggested he ask Mitchell for an opinion on the basement. Mitchell's solution was, the source said, to use precast concrete slabs. In the end, Athol sort of muscled my engineer off the project. You can't have 2 engineers contradicting each other, and Athol was also cheaper. Problems began almost immediately when the developer noticed no supervision on site, especially during work on crucial structural aspects like casting the basement. I would have a question for Athol. He would refer to his draftsman and tell me to deal with him directly. He was either in Australia, on holiday, or in the Kruger Park. Mitchell would often send an associate or his draftsman to check on the work. Matters came to a head when our source said he demanded better oversight from Mitchell on the project and appointed a different engineer to do the inspection and oversee the construction layer by layer. Athol does not like to work with other engineers, so we parted ways. Another consultancy subsequently found this 2-story house had been under spec with no beams and no columns reinforcing the basement. Let me emphasize, am I saying that engineers that are white are incompetent? No. But what I am saying is, do not assume that all white engineers are competent. We have got a tragic example of what happens when you do that. Another thing is that I wanted to mention, and I have referred to it, there is for me a great concern because yes, people are coming out and speaking out now, and yes, we are very grateful for them actually putting this information out in the public domain, even though they are remaining anonymous. However, all of these people were aware of this man's incompetence despite his qualification.